Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Ed Codi, and welcome our guest, former Pittsburgh Penguins player and now current AT&T sports hockey analyst, one of the best in the business, Jay Caufield. Jay, thanks for joining us. Glad to have you.
My pleasure, Ed. Good to talk to you.
Hey, Jay, before we start with the opening game and this season, let's go back to last August. The Penguins, myself and everyone else included, they're playing the 24th seed in Montreal, and everyone thought, well, this is just a warm-up. They're going to move along the playoffs. And I guess what we forget sometimes, those other guys are pros too. But Jay, correct me if I'm wrong. Looking back then, I think it prompted a lot of moves. The Pens looked listless in that playoff round. They even looked at times like they were disinterested. What happened in your view back in August?
You know, I think it's a blend of all that. I mean, in all honesty, Ed, I think you have a team full of players that it's been tough for all players involved. I mean, what they have to go through as an athlete to prepare for a quick tournament. They went against, and we always would say, Ed, a hot goaltender can steal a series. And it wasn't just that, though. I thought just all the points that you made, I thought the Montreal Canadiens to a man outperformed the Penguins. I mean, they battled harder. They won the battles in the tough areas. And then their goaltender, when called upon, was really good. So you get behind the eight ball a little bit, then you're chasing the game, then you're chasing the series. And what happened is what usually can take place. You know, you get beat. And as you mentioned, it prompted a lot of changes. They still had their core intact, but they needed to change the personnel, and we saw a lot of movement.
Yeah, that prompted GM Rutherford to make all those roster moves, letting go of Hornquist and Murray and Schultz and Johnson. Then 3 or 4 coaches got let go also, and then bringing in the new players like Kasperi. He's in quarantine right now, I believe.
Yeah, it's a shame he hasn't been able to be here yet, but yeah, he's in quarantine and I guess almost through it. But it's he's here and hopefully get ready sometime soon.
Matheson and Ceci and Jankowski. So there are a lot of changes. It may take a while for them to get jailed. Jay, are you of the mind? I hear a lot of people, writers and that saying, well, the time is running out in this current group of Penguins. The window is starting to close. I don't think Crosby and Malkin are that old, and Letang in that group. Are you of the same mind that this window is drawing to a close?
I think whenever you see players that get into their 30s and they've been playing a long time and a lot of hockey and they've won a lot and they've been in so many big games, I think whenever you hear players get into that age, that's always going to be a topic. And especially if the team isn't having the success that we're used to seeing them have. I think Crosby still, if you watched the other night, when we look back at game one, he's still a player that dominates. Malkin's still trying to find, I don't know, it was like the Montreal series. He had a great camp, but the series, he didn't have a great series. And I don't think the other night that they were that sharp. But I think whenever you have those guys, Ed, I would never sell that short. It's got to be the guys around them have to perform, have to produce, have to finish. They got to keep the puck out of the net. And then you'll see this team, on a good run. But all those things have to come into play. And the guys who are going to get the blame, they're the guys that get the credit, but they're going to get the blame when it doesn't go well. And you're going to hear those words like, hey, I think time is running out. But I do believe when your superstars fall into the category of the 30s, that's always going to be a line we're going to hear. And they're used to it. They've heard it now for a couple of years. But I also do believe it's in one point of it, Ed, I do think it's squeezing on them a little bit. That's why they have to be surrounded. If it's like having a great quarterback and you don't either have a good offensive line or you don't have receivers to support them. When that takes place, you're wasting that talent. I think Jim Rutherford and the ownership, they know they need to surround them with players that can produce, or otherwise we are going to waste the last years of 2 wonderful careers in being Malkin and Crosby.
With all that being said, let's go to the opening 6-3 loss to the Flyers. I thought watching the game that the third line with Jankowski and McCann and Tanev, that this was the best performing line on their opening night. Still, Jay, I'm seeing, I know it's one game. I don't want to overreact. Some of the same problems that have occurred last year, losing players on the ice. It seemed like times Flyers were just skating free and then losing face-offs. I just didn't see. I know the 6 goals, it all falls on Tristan, but I don't think it's all his fault. I know he whiffs sometimes on saves, but he wasn't getting a lot of help either. Are you seeing some of these same things? I know Rutherford wanted to increase team speed, but it seemed like the Flyers were faster than the Pens.
Yeah, you know what? I think for 2 periods it was I thought the Penguins had for the first 2 periods of the game, moments had the better of the play. And Jari, the first 2 goals they got by him, there's nothing he can do. That's a breakdown in front on your penalty kill. You don't want to double screen your goaltender. That happens, and you don't eliminate a stick. It's a deflection, the first goal. Second goal, virtually the same thing. He was screened, a deflection off the hip of the player out, in the high slot. Not much you can do there sometimes. He was fighting to find the puck and just picked the wrong spot, if you will. I think the only one that I think, if I look at it, and as far as when we're just focusing on goaltending right now with Jari, I think it started to get away from him in the 3rd period. Obviously, they rolled up a number on him. But I thought the pass off the pads, that's what that more was like. The flyer off the right wing just fires it to the net, and that's a set play. I mean, it's a play that all teams work on called pass off the pads. And I believe he fired it either looking for a stick or to keep it low for a rebound, and Jari put it right on the stick of the flyer coming into the slot. So that might have been one. If you're in that position, you would want to steer it to the corner. All those things you can break down. But for me, I think the way you said it, Ed, some of the same things happen in game 1 that we've seen over the years that the Penguins don't like. If a guy pinches down the wall, then that guy's got to support him up high. If a defenseman goes down the wall, then you look at Matheson when he was on the play, I believe it might have been their 3rd goal. They win the draw. He's on his offside. He goes down the wall to keep it in, but really didn't give it a real solid, strong. It gets taken away from him. And then the forward, it might have been Sidney Crosby coming up to make a play, and it gets by him too. So 2 things happen there to get that odd man break going the other way, and they eventually finish it off. That's going to happen sometimes, but when it happens with regularity, that's the problem. And a couple of years ago, that happened quite a bit. So they just have to be smart. And then again, when you're chasing the game, sometimes, Ed, you start to do things a little bit differently. You try to make a play to create offense, and it might go against you. But I do think there's going to be some things. I think the neutral zone at times, you're right. I think they didn't pick up the right guy. I think a defenseman stepped up, and maybe it was from the dots to the wall instead of being to the inside and didn't protect the inside. Hayes had a breakaway. They're the things that they need to correct. And I'm also going to say that a really short training camp for new players coming in, it didn't affect Jankowski, obviously, but certain players, it's going to take some time chemistry-wise, the system-wise, and you got to give it a little bit of a pass, but still, some of the mistakes were still there that you mentioned, Ed, and they certainly want to clean that up. And they're going to have to with the division that they're in with some of the more elite teams, if you will.
It was 4-3, and then in the 3rd period, 12 minutes, the Flyers back-to-back goals within a 22nd span. Really, it was hard to understand how that happened. What did you see there?
I'm still going to go with the one that's just a play off the pads. I mean, I think the problem was every time the Penguins would score, the Flyers would come right back almost. And then I think when that happens, just a little breakdown or a little letdown, and then it's like a little bit of a snowball effect. That seriously, I think sometimes you can get reeling and they score one, then there's a little bit of a letdown. And then again, for me, Jari, the one that I would have talked about would have been the last one, because the guy's throwing it to the net, looking for a stick or pass off the pads, as I just mentioned, and he steers it right into the slot. That's one you want to make sure you get away from. But other than that, it's it's a good thing with hockey. It's not like football. You got to wait a full week. They're coming right back here tonight and going to play the same team. And I expect a better effort throughout. I mean, I really do. I think they'll look at the tape, look at what went wrong, and then try and correct those things. And sometimes it could be as easy as that.
So how does Mike Sullivan get to his team and say, listen, we have to skate better. We can't lose guys in space on the ice. How does he get that done?
I think when the players lose a game, a lot of it they're going to know themselves. You watch the Edmonton Oilers had a bad first game. They come back and win 5-2 last night. And all the excuses, and I'm going to run on for one thing here. You're going to hear the team that loses say, well, we had a short camp. We weren't really sharp, but it didn't affect the team that won. They came out really sharp and crisp. So the Penguins have to be that team, and they got to turn it around tonight. And I believe all lines. I don't think we saw much with the Malkin line. I think that's going to be way better here tonight. I thought the top line, I'm not sure. they're putting him up in a spot on the first line with Crosby. If that continues the way we saw the other night, you'll see that change pretty quickly. All right. So, and there's not much they can really do because with Kapanen out, the ripple effect of that, Ed, is really impacting the lineup. So Rodriguez has to have a good game here tonight to stay in that position because it won't take long for Crosby not to like what's happening and even the coaching staff. And that has a major effect on how the Penguins perform. So I think you're going to just look at a few things. They're not going to get ahead of themselves. They will feel that they played for the majority of the game. They might have been the better team throughout, but then they gave up just a few breakdowns. They'll address that. But again, that's addressed through film, maybe individual talks with certain players. I thought Matheson inside the offensive zone was very good. I mean, you can see what he brings, but I thought there were some things that happened that, and I believe this is part of knowing a new system, new players, and trying to feel his way, and maybe got caught flat-footed a couple times that ended up in goals or a breakaway opportunity that the Flyers build up momentum. So as a coaching staff, you don't want to kind of, you're not going to go crazy right off the bat. They're trying to find their way, but they need to be better on PK, and they need to be better. They got to get a power play when it gets going that they generate a lot. The only power play goal they had was the great hands-eye coordination of Crosby to knock the pass down and put it in net. So I expect to see they got one game out of the way. The new players are warmed up to it now. I expect to see a much, much better effort tonight.
I know that Sullivan wants to keep his confidence in Jarry, but how much will we see the possibility here of a shared net between Jarry and Casey DeSmith during the season?
It's funny. The Penguins, I was looking at the schedule. There are some teams, Ed, that have 9, 10, 11 back-to-back games. The Penguins, I believe, only have 2 or 3. It's really wild how the schedule is playing out for some teams and others not. I think as far as it being a day rest, Jarry, for me, you don't change one thing. He had a day rest. He's back playing. You go with him again. And if he has an off night again, then you throw in Casey DeSmith. But you wouldn't want to throw in Casey DeSmith tonight to let Jarry sit on a night that he wasn't happy with and then come back against the Capitals. So for me, I'm going right back with the guy not causing any head games or controversy right off the bat. But for me, I'm going right back with Jarry. Let him regroup, find his game here tonight, and come away with a win.
I make the analogy like goalies, like quarterbacks. A quarterback throws 2 or 3 picks. You just don't want to sit him down immediately and destroy his confidence. And I see that in the same way with the goalie. Absolutely.
I mean, so think about it. You are listen, they know the mental toughness. To be a professional athlete and be at the level that you get to be in the National Hockey League at this point, you got to be tough and strong mentally for whatever role you do. But there are going to be moments when it starts to slide away from you a little bit, and you have to pull it together. I believe Tristan Jarry is a guy that stays on an even keel, but he does have to pull it together. That was one night. He's the starter now. He's the main guy. That's a different type of pressure. He's going to now get into tonight, and I believe I expect him to be the starter. But if he's not, you're absolutely right, Ed. That has an impact on a guy that's got to now sit a couple more days before he gets another look. I would rather have him get right back in there tonight and prove it. As I said, as we both talked about, through 40 minutes of the game, it was a tight game. It just got away late. But I expected Tristan Jarry to be better, as I do the Penguins as a whole. But your analysis, like as far as comparing it to quarterbacks, is spot on, because you got to listen. Only the coaches know what these players are like. They have to understand the personality and then go with it. I believe they think Tristan Jarry's solid mentally, strong. He'll come back, and I think that's why I think he'll have the look tonight. If he doesn't, I'd be surprised if he's not in the net tonight.
Jay, let's look at this division, the realignment due to the COVID and everything going on. It's a tough division with the Flyers, Boston, the Pens, Washington, the Islanders, Rangers, Buffalo, New Jersey. It seems like the Pens are going to have some real battles with the Flyers, like they always do, and then Boston's pretty good. Everyone says Washington's old. I don't know, Ovechkin, is he slowing down at 35? It didn't seem to be that way last year, and no one seems to mention the Islanders. In the last few years, the Islanders seem to give the Pens fits.
Yeah, they cleaned up last night too. I believe it was 4-0 against the Rangers. Rangers are the young, talented team with Panarin, few guys in there like that. The goaltending is going to be a question mark. Their decor, all these kind of things are going to be looked at, but they're sprinkled with talent up front. Once they start to find their game, they'll be more difficult. Last night, there were no challenge whatsoever for the Islanders. So, yeah, Ed, I mean, the Islanders, we all seem to want to overlook them. I mean, we don't talk. We'll talk. Even for me, I said, hey, Penguins, Flyers, Washington, and Boston. And that is slighting. That's totally, I mean, one of these, think about that, Ed. You get the 4 teams we just mentioned and the Islanders. Only 4 come out of this, right? Only 4 get into the playoffs. So somebody at the end of this 50-some games is going to be odd man out, if you will. The Islanders are a solid team, well coached. They understand their roles. They get great goaltending. That makes it very difficult. And the guys that are talented are coming into their game. Like that Barzal signs a big deal. He's a world-class player. And he made some plays last night that were just outstanding. So they got toughness. They're big in front on the power play, hard to move out of the way. Yeah, they're going to be difficult. So you really have 5 teams that are going to be vying for that 4th spot. And then you've got Buffalo. We know Jersey. They're going to be tough all the time. So again, it's a tough division with 5 teams really, in my opinion, vying for those top 4 spots to get into the hunt.
And how do you see Tampa Bay defending the defending champs? They're a tough team. They're physical. I don't think they had that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jay. Everyone talked about speed changing, but they seemed like they were a pretty physical team last year.
They were. Now the Kucherov's out for the whole year. I think he can be back for the playoffs. I think, Ed, I don't have the division in front of me who they're with. I think they might have the easiest path though to come out of that division. I'm not sure. I think they're with Carolina, Florida. I'm not saying it's easy. Nothing is easy in this league or any professional sports league, but they have a pretty good walk to get themselves into the playoffs, and then you go from there. And you never know how much hunger guys win a cup, and it's not true for everybody, but some guys lose that same drive. They didn't have the hunger and determination that they had last year, but I think they're always going to be a threat. If Stamkos is healthy, if Kucherov is able to get back for the playoffs, I expect that team to be in the playoffs and then go from there. And their goaltender, they have one of the best goaltenders in deep pairings. They're big. Hedman, one of the best, if not the best defenseman in the league, always right there. So they're always going to be tough. And I do think they have a little bit of an easier path to get into the first round of the playoffs than some of the other divisions.
Hey, Jay, let's talk about the other opponent everyone has to face, and that's the COVID virus. So the last year they had the bubble, and that protected all the players. There's no bubble. They've shortened the distance and the travels, but still the players, there's more exposure. The National Hockey League protocol to protect them and to proceed. We know that Dallas Stars had 17 players with COVID out of a total of 27 cases in the National Hockey League. Right. What is the overall protocol, and what is the National Hockey League doing to try and protect the players?
You know, it's funny. We don't know as much about the NHL as we hear about the NFL. So I do think, though, as soon as there's any kind of positive case or even if anything that comes across or you're in contact, I'm sure they're trying to do some form of tracing. They take temperatures of guys come in the buildings. They're tested. I think they're doing everything they can do to keep guys, distanced. But once you get into your practices and stuff, it is what it is. You see coaches wearing masks. I think, Ed, you know what? I think we're 9 months, 10 months into this. And I think what the athlete has done. Now, listen, I think there's any person in the world, they're getting a paycheck, they're getting paid. This is what they do. This is their job. I think the sacrifices that go with what they're doing as a player, to have yourself ready. I tip my cap to the NFL to get through the, they're into the playoffs, because players, some teams didn't practice all week and then have to play a game, and you're performing at the highest level, the physical part of the game. If you're not prepared, then you're looking at career-ending injuries that happen all the time. So I think that they had to be prepared and put on a good show. And what the organizations had to do, you have to tip your captain of all the leagues. And right now, the NHL, they know, and this is the one league too, Ed, that doesn't have the TV contracts. The revenue's not there. They're putting this game on with not many people in the stands. It's very difficult for the ownership, down to the players. They're all making sacrifices, just like everybody else in the world. So I don't want to get away from that to say, I don't understand. This is professional sports. They're playing a game to get paid, but it is a much different atmosphere, what they have and are able to do. I think this travel, it makes it riskier that they're spending a couple nights in another city, but I think they're doing a good job of probably keeping them in the same hotel, same rooms, all those kind of things. I think that's going to, and hopefully that we don't hear of any more outbreaks, but I think they're prepared, Ed. If something does happen, they're prepared to shut down games and then kind of work from there. The schedule's open to make movement. I think that's what we all have to be prepared for, and let's hope it does not happen.
Jay, you were reading my mind because that was my next question. No other league that depends on gate receipts like the National Hockey League. And I've heard, I think the Penn said and some other teams, they're going to really bleed money this year. That's going to make a big change on the cap. Some teams may need some financial help from the league to bail them out this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I saw last night Arizona has people in the stands. I'm not sure what number they allowed them to have. It was kind of a breath of fresh air to see that too, by the way. Had people jumping up in the stands. Interesting that that's allowed to happen in Arizona. Because that's a hotbed right now for COVID. But I think you look at Arizona, you look at Florida, you look at Carolina maybe. And it's hard when you go through the rest of the league. Really, the attendance is pretty solid in most places. But the cities I just mentioned, that's always an up in the air thing. And as ownership, I'm not sure what the league intends to do, what kind of sharing they're doing, but there are certainly going to be some teams that need it that, possibly if they don't get something, might not survive it. I mean, it's hard to be going into this. I believe there were some owners that would have preferred not to play, and they would lose less. How about that? That's what they would lose less money, Ed, but the game can't survive. I don't think you can afford now in this day and age to miss a year. So they're putting their best foot forward, and let's see what they end up doing sharing wise. Look, they're putting logos on helmets just to bring money in. They're naming rights for the divisions, all that kind of stuff to drive revenue. I think that's a great idea. I don't see any problem with that.
Hey, Jay, and we finish up here. I know you did mention about the first line and Rodriguez. I wanted you to give me a quick scouting report on the first four lines, starting with the line one with Crosby, Rodriguez, and Gensel, and Kasperi when he comes back. Just a quick scouting report on each one as we go down through them.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Crosby, we always talk about, and you'll hear it, Ed, you'll hear other players talk about it. They play a quick game, a quick little short area pass game, but you got to move and you got to get him the puck and you got to get to the opening after that. So you're going to expect to see Gensel and Crosby work extremely well together. Hopefully Rodriguez has a good, starts to find a little more rhythm with them tonight. I believe when Kapanen gets in, he's a skater, quick, hard on pucks, skilled. I think they're really hoping that can be a bust out line, but they're a quick pass game. Always find the opens. You got to be prepared for that puck to be on your stick right by the net or whatever and be able to bear it. I think that's what Jake Gensel, he finishes. He gets the areas and he finishes. Very, very important. So you expect to see some of the same stuff when Kapanen gets back. The Malkin line, you've got Rust, you've got Zucker. Rust had an outstanding year last year. Zucker's going to come in. He's a goal scorer. I think Malkin, what you got to make sure you don't get away from, there's a lot of move with that line. So, but it's still, if they can start to find their stride, Ed, that's why what you said, very hard to find the Penguins be an easy out when those two guys, those top two lines are flying. So I expect to see some of the same stuff this year. The Jankowski line, as we saw the other night, now, this might be the positive. Yeah, this line got pieced together because Kapanen's not there. Now, that might be a positive effect that happened with this because they put Tanev and McCann, two of the faster skaters on the Penguins team, with Jankowski, who's a big body, not as quick, not as fast, but they worked extremely well. Straight line game, get to the net, create havoc, expect to see it continue the same way. Bluger, he's going to be that guy. The Bluger line, they're still playing around with that. Lafferty, he's a big body, can skate like the wind. He's got to be physical, but there's going to be movement with that. When Kapanen comes back, where does Lafferty fit in with this mix? And Zach Aston-Reese is on the shelf. When they all come back, they expect that to be a line that they can rely on to take defensive zone faceoffs, maybe go against the top one or two lines on the opposition, but they got to be strong. They got to be better in the faceoff circle than they were game number one. So, but it all starts with the draw, but that's what you can expect. Bluger's a solid player. And just going to wait to see who his line mates are.
But they're going to be relied on Colton in that grouping.
Oh, Colton Sevier. Yeah, now here a right-handed shot. He's expected to be on that fourth line. So that's what I mean. This right now for Rodriguez, not to jump a gun a little bit, but he needs to have a good showing to see what happens because it's going to be Lafferty or he that's not in this lineup. If when Kapanen comes back, somebody's going to slide down. And it's going to be interesting what they do. It's either capping it, I mean, it's either going to be Rodriguez or Lafferty with Bluger and Sevier. And you got to look, they're right-handed shots. Who can play the off wing? That's another thing. You're valuable if you can play both wings. We're talking the names I just mentioned outside of Zach Astor-Reese, Ed, are all right-handed shots. Sevier, Rodriguez, and Lafferty. All right, they're right-handed. Somebody can play the off wing. They're very valuable because some guys can't do that, Ed. Some guys don't adjust. It doesn't work for them. So whoever can do that has a leg up to make sure they stay in the lineup.
And Jay, finally, the importance of the defensemen, Ruido and Dumoulin, Letang, all guys with experience. Letang's the mainstay there. Those guys have to come up big.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Dumoulin, Letang log a lot of minutes, but I think with Matheson, they're hoping. First of all, we know the John Marino story was an outstanding story. He was phenomenal in year number one. They expect the same thing from him this year. I think put in Matheson. I think they rushed that. I didn't necessarily. I expected to see Pettersson with Marino and let Marino play his game because, in my opinion, Pettersson might defer. They know Marino's a skater. We saw more of Marino when Pettersson was with them. They moved Matheson up with them. That was a little bit of a different look. They're trying to find their way. But again, Marino's going to be relied on a lot. Hopefully cut down on some of the minutes for Letang. I mean, Letang, everybody wants to play as many minutes as possible, Ed. I think Letang would be better for him to keep him under that, at least around that 23, 24 minute mark. You get above 25, it's taxing on a player and they demand a lot from him, but he gets better and stronger through games, but they got to harness him a little bit. And I do think though the decor is improved. I think Chad Ruido will always be a guy they can rely on if they need somebody. He's always has himself ready to play and he's proven that time and time again. That's why he keeps earning himself contracts. So, and Ricola, I like Ricola a lot. He just might not get the look that he needs, but when he's able to, he can skate and knows when to jump up into play, plays the game hard. I like all of them.
Jay, always good talking to you. No one does it better than you. Your great insight. Look forward to watching the Pens game and hearing your analysis. Take care of yourself and stay safe.
Same to you, Ed. Great to talk to you as well.
This has been Spotlight.